But I think basically it's going to be nice. I finally got God, that thing is battle. Can someone get on their phone and see if you can see? Yes, please.
Is this
You go to,
stands right here?
well, it's not even. It just says it started, but I can't see. Do you know how to get to it?
Yeah, I'm on this one here. That's where I went when they sent me.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
This is the problem. We would have to go over there and sign in, but so they send us just something else. I don't
Yeah, there
know
was a
how
link.
to get in. Yeah.
Um,
Get out of here. Try it again.
if you just Google,
Google?
yeah, just
Okay. That's
go.
even
Well,
better.
actually, go to YouTube. You have a YouTube
Yeah, I
app.
have YouTube. Yes.
YouTube.
Yeah.
And go to Stonecrest.
Hold on.
Uh,
To it. Okay.
Stonecrest.
Church, community. Oh, Stonecrest Mall?
No.
Stonecrest Boulevard, Stonecrest
Director.
Director.
Do you need help with anything?
No, thank you though. I appreciate it.
Director.
But thanks though.
So that's it?
Nothing. Search.
Well, I want to search right now.
Yeah.
So
That.
okay, yay. Oh, nice. Okay, now we can go in, I guess.
Okay. And it's not showing anything.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I hear it. Oh, it's delayed.
It's a little delay, yeah.
When you talk to her, it was delayed. I heard
It
you
still
say,
has
oh,
that,
thank
not
you.
the camera.
Like
Did you hear that too? Okay.
okay, so can you see me? I'm in the camera.
No.
Oh, no.
Not yet.
I'm just posing for the camera. Get the right shot.
Yeah, we can hear it, but can't say anything. It's all delayed.
So you're getting the audio, but not the video.
Right.
You don't?
It was. It went on.
I just hear myself the whole time. Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, I see you now.
Oh, thank God.
All right,
Okay.
we're all set.
And then
Thank you.
Here, let me test the microphone.
Although you're not moving.
I don't see the green light on here.
Yeah, sooner or later.
Yeah, I guess that outward bound.
No, go ahead, I took it off.
Get into a different USB.
Well,
Can you select? Maybe you have to select the. So sometimes they'll pick up, your other.
I'm going to switch USB.
Sometimes it'll default, to your integrated camera.
Right.
You have to switch over.
Well, I would see me.
Yeah, exactly. You would see you, exactly.
Come on.
I see a red light on your. There's a red light.
Okay.
So the camera's.
Okay, the sound only now.
Yeah. Thank you. No. Yeah, that's because, but that's not it. Is it green?
Yep.
If you're facing that way, it looks okay, right? Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Behind it.
Test it. Yeah. Is that too loud, guys? A little bit loud. It's okay. Okay.
Oh, okay.
But I think if he talks through here,
I should be able to hear it, but yeah, but just to be so I don't get feedback and all that,
Right.
have him wear it. Hopefully.
Oh, right, in that one.
This is for the webcam.
So yeah, please stay away from me. Yes. Yeah, that's better. See. Okay.
So what do you think of as far as the height and the angle and all that?
Is that good?
I don't know how tall.
I don't think he's not that tall.
Well, I can.
Yeah,
You can always put it down. And then you could,
That was so stressful.
I know. Especially when you're like, oh my god. Okay, so he has to wear the little,
It would be nice if you would. It's right
wear
there.
that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing it?
You can see it? Oh, good. Yay!
Okay, yeah.
Hello? It is? Hi.
Oh, no, sorry.
You can chat to me. So I can
Okay, let me do that.
I just said
Let me
yes.
send you what you watched it.
I'm going to set the clubhouse on fire. Oh, yeah.
Kevin, right? Kevin?
Jack.
Jack, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Elizabeth, I see. Good. I can't chat back, but I
I
can see.
did, I just sent you.
Perfect. I see it. Good. I can't chat back. So Lee, if you can hear me, I'm signed on my account versus the Stonecrest account. So I can't sign on as Stonecrest to chat back. Didn't think about that until now, unfortunately. Right there. You don't mind wearing a lavalier right there?
Oh, I'll wear a lavalier
I
for sure.
appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And then we'll also have this one.
Excellent.
See, that's for the live stream, the lavalier.
Oh, so use both.
Yeah,
Use
please.
both. Okay.
Very good.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate this. Nice turnout. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce you to our council member here, Raul Campillo, and I'll let him take it from here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I feel sorry for a few of you who are almost into the shade, but thank you for being here. It's a nice, cool night. Just want to say thank you for the invitation so we can talk about the issue with the development that's planned for over here at the Fry's. For those who haven't met me before or seen me, my name is Raul Campillo. I'm the Council's District 7 City Council member. So that goes all the way from the 5 freeway in Linda Vista, all the way to the 125 at the other end of San Carlos that meets Santee and El Cajon, north of Friars Road. And I was elected in November 2020, so I've been representing you the last year and a half. I know we're here to talk very specifically about the planned development, so let's just jump right into it. In October and November of 2020, prior to my election, San Diego City Council approved 2 changes to our city's development rules. The changes to the development rules were part of what was called the Complete Communities Initiative from Mayor Kevin Faulkner. The Complete Communities, essentially, as a policy, pre-approves developments as long as they meet specific criteria. My office has requested a map and a list of all locations where this could potentially qualify sites for developments across District 7. Complete Communities, as a policy, was designed to eliminate the discretion of the City Council in the input of these developments. In essence, the City Council does not have a role in these developments that meet those criteria in what's called a Transit Priority Area, a TPA. And that's a key definition, and I'm gonna get into that in a second. So these projects that lie within a TPA and thus by law are fast-tracked through the city staff, don't come before City Council for approval. Many times you will see things come to City Council for us to vote for approval of entitlements and other things. And those typically are because you're changing a community plan, you're changing zoning, you're changing the underlying rules for how to develop in an area, and that requires the City Council to sit as a body. Technically, we don't actually sit as council members in that sense where we're legislators and can put out views on the plan. We actually sit as judges. It's called quasi-judicial, and we don't take positions on those plans until the meetings come forward. This is not one of those discretionary quasi-judicial processes. The Complete Communities proposal changed that so that it doesn't come to City Council, so that we are technically not able to stop certain types of developments. And a lot of that comes from an original law in 2013 at the state level. That law was called Senate Bill 743, and Senate Bill 743 from 2013 defines a transit priority area as an area within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop that is existing or planned. Typically they are existing, not planned transit stops. A major transit stop itself is defined in that law as a site containing an existing rail station, several other definitions of major transit hubs, and then it also includes intersections of 2 or more major bus routes with a frequency of service of 15 minutes or less during peak period times of commuting. So, the Complete Communities Initiative adopted these state definitions and applied it down to San Diego. So if you're wondering why there hasn't been as much community input, why there hasn't been as much communication, why there hasn't been a lot of these things going on that typically come with developments in the past, it was based on a state law in 2013 that then was implemented in October and November of 2020, and then now applies to certain transit priority areas throughout the city. Now, one of the issues too is how do you define 1/2 mile? In the municipal code for San Diego, as it adopted that definition in 2020, was to say 1/2 mile is where is that transit stop, and then draw a circle that is 1/2 mile around it. Of course, I've raised with city staff before, that creates a little bit of a problem because someone might have to walk across a freeway to go 1/2 mile, and it's not walking 1/2 mile to get there, it's actually walking a lot further. So when back in February, I actually spoke at a city council meeting as different rules were being contemplated, and they're actually being drafted right now, and more updates to the municipal planning laws. I asked, why is it that we use what they call as a crow flies distance, meaning bird's eye view, where's 1/2 mile from this bus stop or that trolley station, as opposed to how far a person has to walk once they get to that trolley station. And the explanation that was given to me by one of our planning directors for the city, Heidi Von Bloom is her name. She's an excellent city and staff and public servant. She explains that this definition is actually part of 5 or 6 different parts of our municipal code. And when you change the definitions of municipal code in one section, it requires a lot of work to make sure that the ramifications of changing it in other sections doesn't have unintended consequences. And so I immediately noticed, okay, there's, District 7 has a lot of people who need to walk someplace, a lot of people who have trouble walking places. So it seems to me that this definition needs to be really looked at and analyzed to make sure that we are creating accessibility that we are meeting ADA requirements, that we're doing a lot of things that we ought to do to provide the public with meaningful decisions, not just on paper choices. And so when I brought that up, that was the explanation that I was given. And I know that city staff is currently analyzing those different areas of the city law to figure out what changes might be able to be made. All of that is the context of why there is a development here right over near your homes, here along where the Fry's building used to be. So let's jump into essentially what that project is looking at this point. My staff has done a lot of outreach to get a better understanding of some of the key components based on the questions that you have sent. How many of you have called my office or emailed my office with concerns or questions? I'm seeing a solid 15, maybe 15 people, and I'm sure there was many questions in there, so we're probably closer to 50 questions. For those who haven't met Vic Vatil, he is my Director of Community Engagement, and he oversaw the Serra Mesa neighborhood for a long time before handing that off to another community rep. So he knows Serra Mesa pretty darn well. He looked into all these things and reached out to figure out what the development is looking like. So before we jump into question and answer, I have just some of the details to answer some of the top level questions that we've received from staff. So the Walmart lot. We understand that there's going to be currently planned a Chick-Fil-A and a Starbucks. Those are going to be privately owned lots with private developers, and there will be drive-throughs there, and it's our understanding that the drive-through and customers are going to be maintained within the parking lot. The Fry's lot has several components to it that include up between 1,000 and 1,200 dwelling units in that space. Bless you. That's proposed multifamily residential development. There are multiple project names that I won't list right now, but we can give them to you. And so there's things like an easement vacation, which essentially means they have to give permission for them to build on a particular lot. On a water easement, we have the demolition of the existing commercial building, which is currently in review. There is another permit coming through for the rough grading of the project site to remove the existing foundation of the Fry's electronic building and establish pad grading for future redevelopment of that site. There's two more permits beyond that. There's a new 5-story above ground parking structure for the adjacent to-be-built apartment buildings that's in review. And then the final in review part of this project is the 300,000+ square foot apartment building that would have between 1,000 and 1,200 units in that zone. I see a lot of people taking notes, so that's encouraging. As we move forward with this, I see a lot of people breathing in deeply and sighing, and I see a little bit of head shaking, and we're here to answer as many questions as we can. I want to stress that I absolutely take new development very seriously because we need to make sure that they follow the rules as absolutely on point. We need to make sure that both municipal and state law are being followed, and we have to demand transparency with what those plans look like so that you can ultimately have the input that is possible. Like I said, the community, Complete Communities initiative ultimately is what governs this project right now and removes the ability of the city council to get super deep into the weeds to the point of preventing the development. However, we are keeping a close eye on the enforcement of housing regulations, making sure that we are holding them accountable for that. I know that there's a lot of, I know that we've actually been successful in my office for getting ADU removed from a home that was not following the rules, was not following the permits, and did not follow the law. So I want you to know that I'm willing to go to the mat to make sure that the rules are followed, and that is the bottom line. We will strictly enforce those rules, and then of course, as it comes to the development that is going about, I promise you that I will do everything in my power to make sure that it has as little negative impact as possible, and that includes making sure that your viewpoint, as it relates to the structure of the roads, new road improvements, new street lights, new stoplight, whatever it is that you're pointing out to us that say, this is gonna be a negative impact and we have to get that done as part of the plan, that we make sure that we find funding in the budget for that, put it on the developer as much as possibly that we can, make sure there's clear crosswalks, make sure that the sidewalks are improved, make sure that the trees are trimmed, all those sorts of things. And of course, taking back suggestions to the developer and pushing as hard as possible to make sure things like the exterior aesthetics also fit what the neighborhood wants to see. Those are things that I can advocate for vociferously. But I do want you to understand that the current state of the law is that it takes it out of the hands of the city council to get in there and stop it. So as it stands right now, I want to just say that I thank you all for all your questions that you sent to our office, whether you called Vic, whether you called Cheryl, our Director of Administration in my office, and the emails you sent in. And I know that a lot of you have been posting on Nextdoor, on Facebook. We look at that too. We want to make sure that the fear that you might have of your neighborhood being, less safe or overburdened, we want to assuage you of that as much as we possibly can. And that's something that we can have a role in, that's something that you can have a role in, and that's something we're gonna work together to make sure it happens. So as we get to that part of the presentation, I'm happy to take your questions, your suggestions. Me and my staff are here to hear you out and get a sense of what you want to see happen, and then to the fullest extent that we can go advocate for that, we will. I'm happy to go to questions first, and I appreciate everyone raising their hand, and I'll call on 3 or 4 people so that we can get an order going. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Thank you. Please. Do I know if any traffic studies have been conducted for this development? I know that Vic has a very good sense of everything that's happened. Typically, whenever you're gonna build, even if it's ministerial rather than discretionary, meaning if all it takes is city staff to check the boxes and say you're good to go, as opposed to the city council voting yes or no, a traffic study is part of the application process. Almost every single development has that because they want to get a sense of, they couldn't build 20,000 units there, right? They have to stay within certain guidelines. Vic, do we have a sense of the traffic study?
There was one done, and it was a minimal impact, but they do have to add some traffic calming measures at the exit points and increase access.
So in essence, the developer is going to have to provide traffic calming resources at entrance and exit points. But what they determined was that the 1,000 to 1,200 units is not going to have the substantial impact. And part of that, I have to imagine, is based on the former use of that land, being commercial, being the Fries, having so many people, that they are taking into account what the change is from the commercial over to residential. We know that they are fundamentally different, I get that, but when they do these traffic studies, they apply their best practices and their scientific analysis, and I'm hearing that they're anticipating that it's not a significant change from what the current use is.
When was this study done?
That's a question, that's an answer we can get back to you on. When was the study done?
So if you have 1,200 units, and let's just say hypothetically, 2 people live in each one of those units.
Sure.
That's 2,400 additional cars that could be on the road.
What she's saying is that if you anticipate that there's 1,200 units and there's 2 people per unit, that's 2,400 people, and continue on.
So those cars will be on the road, and they also need a place to park. Will there be ample parking provided to the tenants or owners of these units?
The question is, will there be ample parking for these units? My understanding is yes, from my debrief on this. I believe that they are anticipating a significant parking structure, a 5-story above ground parking structure to be adjacent. So that's not the number of spaces. That's just saying how tall it is. But my understanding is that this does not fall into a zone where sometimes in the city there's 0 parking requirement. That is not what this is. There will be significant parking there.
One additional question.
Yes, follow-up question.
The traffic that will happen as a result of these 2 new businesses, even though the drive-throughs will be in the parking lot, you still need to have room for the cars to come in there.
Sure.
So has that traffic study also
Understood. So the follow-up question was, what about a traffic study for the two businesses that are planned to go in there? The Starbucks and the Chick-Fil-A is the two that you're alluding to, correct? That was done. Vic, you said that there was an attachment that was sent. When you say it was sent, to whom?
I have it right now.
Okay.
Well, it's communicated out to the various stakeholders by the DSD.
Okay. What Vic is telling me is that the Development Services Department, which is essentially the permitting department for the city, did communicate out the traffic study for those two businesses to the relevant stakeholders. The relevant stakeholders, of course, is, what does that mean? That is where typically the near surrounding businesses and others who sign up on the city's website to receive those reports for that type of development get that. It also includes the planning group area, so that would be the Serra Mesa Planning Group that would have received that. Can I just have a quick show of hands? Who's familiar with what the planning groups are? Okay, I want everyone to know that a planning group, there's about 50 of them in the city, and essentially, there's 50 zones in the city where you have your neighbors who have basically a monthly meeting to discuss what development is coming up. Yours is the Serra Mesa Planning Group. Sorry, Kearney Mesa, yeah. You guys are blended together, yeah. And so they meet and discuss the development across the entire zone. That includes north of the airport, south of the airport. I think it extends down close to Friars Road in certain components, so where then the Mission Valley Planning Group starts. So there are neighbors of yours who are regularly kept up to date by city staff on what is coming in your neighborhoods. That's all your questions?
No, I have lots.
You have many more, okay. Thank you very much. You were next, yes. You were second, and then, I'm sorry, she had her hand, and then we had 3, 4, and then I'll come back to you for 5. You come 5th.
So with the traffic, I know in the evening time, people are coming south on Stonecrest Boulevard, and it is people trying to get onto the 5. So they're coming down daily as well as through our neighborhood. So with these increased businesses, is that study also going to be looking at that? Because we have, plenty of evening traffic to the point where I cross the street over here, and some people do not stop. And that's early in the morning and the evening. So that's my concern. We're going to get extra traffic to avoid the daily traffic where there's, two businesses. And then my second question regarding that traffic is the bus only comes not every 15 minutes, as you alluded to. I mean, the bus right there across from Walmart doesn't come every 15 minutes. So are they going to increase bus services, or are they going to increase a trolley stop that we've heard that possibly could be added in the future from down at
So let's take those two components differently. So the first component there was about the essentially, does the traffic study take into account the fact that with new neighbors, you tend to have people take alternate pathways that ends up coming through the neighborhood? I know that is part of traffic studies, is to anticipate where people end up choosing, because traffic, like water, tends to go to the path of least resistance. That is definitely part of what our city staff does in a traffic assessment. So I have to believe that when they did this, they anticipated that, because they take into account driving behavior, they take into account increased population, and they take into account, for example, as I think through the San Diego State Mission Valley campus environmental impact report and traffic study they did there, they anticipated traffic that was coming all the way at the end of the development, which they knew was not just one component, like the stadium, it was the entirety of the component. So as they're looking at that, they would take into account the entirety of everything that's getting built. The second thing was about the bus stops. Are they going to increase traffic or are they going to increase frequency of bus stops and things like that? That would be a question for the Metropolitan Transit System, for MTS. If they anticipate increasing that, that is its own independent board that has elected officials from the county, from other cities, from the city of San Diego. I am an alternate on that board, but I'm not a regular member of that board. So I'm not entirely familiar with how they anticipate increases for a brand new development like this, but we can absolutely get you the answer to that. My understanding at the current moment is that we are about 75 to 80 bus drivers short of full staffing. So it's difficult to increase bus routes at this current moment. They're in the middle of contract negotiation. There's lots of pressure on wages right now, so they're having trouble keeping their bus drivers from retiring or from quitting and going to other jobs. So short answer is, in the short term, I do not anticipate they would increase the bus traffic to accommodate for that. However, that development is going to take a good amount of time to put together and build. So there is a chance that we can have some influence on that, request that, push hard for that. That's something that we can actually go for and try to see done by the time we have people moving in. Thank you for your questions. Very good questions. Yes. The question was, is the traffic something we can share? And it's absolutely something we can share. I'm wondering if that's something that we can share with the HOA board here so that they can blast out. Okay, wonderful. Second part, yes. Sure, excellent. So, and you alluded to this question as well with a potential new trolley line. The current plan for expanding the trolley, now that they are done with the blue line, going to UCSD, is to create what's called a purple line. The purple line would essentially mirror the blue line, which runs along the coast through San Diego, through downtown National City, Chula Vista, all the way to San Ysidro. The purple line would come further more inland, cut through all those same cities, but then come through San Diego, through City Heights, then down into Mission Valley, and then up through Serra Mesa, Kearny Mesa area. Because of how many people have jobs in Kearny Mesa, that's the planned expansion. However, there is not the current funding mechanism to actually pay for that yet. So that is still not what I would say on the front burner of getting towards done. There's a lot of things that have to happen before that. The plan, as you point out, it's been in the works for a long time. What I will say is that it is definitely now near the top of the list of, it's pretty much the top of the list of things that need to get done on the regional transportation plan, which is something we have as a county. Other things have jumped it. For example, the Losang corridor, essentially the train trolleys, train tracks that go through Del Mar on the bluffs there that are about to fall through, and we got $300 million from the state to fix that, because if that train were to fall off the cliff, it would be very bad for our local economy and transit. So things have leapfrogged it, but the purple line is there, but I wouldn't say that it's imminent by any means. Yes.
Do you know how much open space amenities are going to be included in the new development?
At this point, they're still not clear on what the open space for that will be.
Is there a minimum percentage that they have to have?
Typically there is a minimum percentage that they have to have, a minimum square footage. One of the policies that we've had at City Council this year was a parks master plan for the entire city, where we actually require developers to either set aside land for open space or build in pocket parks or mini parks into their development. They have to meet a certain, there's basically a menu of points based on what it is they build for their residents or their community. And ultimately, if they put like a really big open space park, that's a lot of points. If they put a basketball court, that's less points. If they build a dog park, that's a lot of points. So there's a menu of how that goes about. So they have to meet a certain threshold, but fundamentally, it's not baked into the plan of what that's going to be yet. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm gonna pick the next four at this point. I'm gonna go polo shirt back there. I'm gonna go with you second. I'm gonna go with you third, and helmet fourth. So go ahead.
I appreciate you coming. You really don't even know who's just ran the tallest ceremony earlier. But I do commercial development for a living. There's been zero consideration to the traffic. I'm not going to stop the 1,100 units. I get that. I support housing going in. What are you doing as our representative who's elected you to mitigate the traffic here and the impact that's going to happen here in our community with elderly and with kids? As
So the first thing that I always think about when it comes to traffic is safety, making sure that there's the proper speed limits, making sure there's enough crosswalks, making sure the technology is there to make sure that that's safe, because we don't want people speeding in any but part of our neighborhood. The second thing I would say is that city staff is telling us that they have analyzed traffic as part of this development.
There's been zero study done on it. I know this for a living. There's been zero done on that from city staff.
Okay, well, in that case, I'll look into it and I'll get back to you to make sure that that's actually true. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last question. Well, I'm taking their word for it, sir. So I think the other things that I think about when it comes to traffic mitigation is making sure that fundamentally that the sort of the flow of how they choose to depart out of the streets here, that we don't incentivize them going through the neighborhood. That's something that you brought up right there. That there's the width of the lanes, that there is enough lanes, something as simple as the stoplights being programmed so that they have the proper flow and the certain monitor. You know, some streets don't have it. It's where you pull up to a red light and it can tell that you're waiting there and nobody else is coming. So we have those types of technological things we do. We just put some of those in on Friars Road to make sure Friars Road can flow faster. Not less safe, but faster. And so as it comes to those sorts of things, we also encourage people to take the public transit that is near their home. For example, things that I've supported for any young people who are going to live there, we have things like that we've just instituted at MTS through a directive from Sandag, like a free youth opportunity pass, where anybody under 18 can take the trolley or a bus for free. I'm trying to expand that to 24-year-olds so that anybody who's likely to be in college or university might want to take that. So we find those small incentives to make sure people don't want to drive if we can make it as fast as possible, as connective as possible, as safe as possible. So there's lots of small mechanisms we can do there, and I think that there's also more that the transportation department, knowing more about the scientific aspects of how drivers choose their roads and how they drive on these types of paths, will come forward with.
Here at 4 o'clock on a weekday afternoon, and tell me we need 1,200 more people here. As our representative, I encourage you to do that.
Very good.
Yeah, it's ridiculous out here right now.
Yes. So the question was, did you say the quantity? Yeah, essentially the percentage that is set aside as rent-restricted, affordable housing. We have municipal code on that. It's been increasing percentage-wise over the last several years. My understanding is that for this year, it's 15% set aside. Last year was 10% set aside. What I don't know, Vic, do we know if the developers are going to have on-site or if they're going to pay the in lieu fee? Okay, so there's two things that could happen, right? Developers are given an option. They can either pay a certain price per square foot, is it per square foot or per unit? I think it's per square foot, based on how many units they're building that goes into a fund at the city to build affordable housing elsewhere. That's called the in lieu fee. The other option is to build it on site. And when they build it on site, they have to meet a certain percentage of their units that is rent restricted, which means not just anybody can move in there. They have to show income eligibility, and typically that is at 65% of the area median income. The area median income is an economic calculation based on a family of four, and says how much does a family of four have to make to be at the area median income. That right now, I think this year it's actually over 100,000. I think it's just a hair over 100,000. Last year it was in the range of like 94,000 for a family of four. So what they do is they say, that's the area median income. What's 65% of that? So in essence, based on my understanding of the law, 15% of those units, if they're built on site as the affordable units, which would be somewhere between 150 and 180 or so, would be at 65% of the area median income, meaning a family of 4 making $65,000 or less would be eligible to live there. So 15% will be affordable, 85% will be market rate, unless the developer chooses to pay the in lieu fee so that the city and other agencies can fund them elsewhere. Thanks for that.
Permitted at 100% market rate. I appreciate it.
Who was my third person? I think it was, yes, it was you? Was it? I'm gonna come to you after the helmet, thanks.
Yeah, mine was thinking about the access to Mission Valley, Snapdragon Stadium there. Is there going to be any improvements, say, if our children wanted to cycle down the area? There's there's a lot of transient down there, but I was wondering if there was more safe cycle lanes, if there's going to be more traffic and stuff like that. So my concern was having a nice, safe path all the way to the Snapdragon Stadium where the parks are and stuff like that.
I do not know if the current plan allocates for a safe path all the way to the new SDSU West development. That's something that I would love to see. I think that all the communities around the stadium want to see more pathways to get there because it's going to be a lot of open space.
Pathway there, just
Runs along the golf course, right?
but a safe one. So if there's more cars, like kids can just cycle there, and then and people who want to walk.
Can I ask you really quick? So this sounds like something I heard a lot of yeses on this one from the crowd. What is the ideal situation that you would like to see?
I'd love to see, nature, some nice, plants and stuff like a scenic walk would be nice.
A scenic walk, at the very least.
Like over here. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. But also a safe bike path. You also mentioned a vehicular path. Did you just say that as well?
No, if I want a safe area for if there's a bike path, if there's going to be vehicles there, like going up to the freeway area.
Understood.
Yeah, so basically a safe area for if kids were walking there.
It's not clear to me that that is part of the amenities that would be built as part of this development, partly because it extends far from it, even though it might come close to it. That's a far distance to go, relatively speaking. But that doesn't mean that that can't be part of a different budgetary item that my office and I advocate for. I don't think that my knowledge of where the Sandag, public transit, biking lanes, and pathways, it's early priority plan. There's a lot of acronyms, but fundamentally, I don't think that pathway is part of that plan, but it's something that we can advocate for in the city as a place to spend more money to create that pathway. Thank you. Great question. Well, I was going to go to you, and then I was going to go to the purple shirt. So one of you choose.
Okay, so here's my question.
Here's your question.
We think bubble, right? We're concerned, everybody's concerned, I get that. You mentioned 60 other communities like ours. So here's the bigger question. Are things going on in all 59 others that are going to increase population? And I don't know about anybody else, but I like to drink water. I like water. I think it's a good idea. So is there any possibility that this whole thing is just going to explode? And in your opinion, what would you like to see happen, not just your neighborhood, but in San Diego with development, period?
So let's talk about the first aspect of your question, which is, are other communities facing the same circumstance? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, they are. Okay, yes, not every single, if there's a concentration of housing units, typically right now what you're seeing a lot of it is still around downtown, and you are seeing it in, there's a lot of concentration around UCSD going up right now. It really is a bit scattershot right now because it's not a unified development plan. But yes, your neighborhood is not the only neighborhood that's seeing apartments go up. You're not the only community group that I've come in front of who's raised the questions of traffic safety, and traffic. Absolutely right. And the fundamentals of the policy of this affecting so many different areas and so many planning areas is at the state, our state legislature, our governor have acknowledged that we do not have enough housing for the growth that we're seeing as a state. And so the incentives right now, based on state law, are to try to promote the development of housing units. That is impacting San Diego, it's impacting everywhere. And the number one issue that we are hearing from all Californians about is how are we going to address our homelessness crisis? And the second aspect of that is it's unaffordable to live here. Fundamentally, we're operating on the supply and demand formula of if you build more of it, it drives down pressure on prices, which means that ultimately everyone else's prices will be lower. So that is what is happening here. And it's happening in Carmel Mountain Ranch. It's happening in Del Cerro, which is also my district, your district. It's happening in Pacific Beach. It's happening all over the place. The transit priority area map shows a lot of spaces that are qualified, and most of them are not in District 7 as a whole. And in fact, the Serra Mesa area, as I look through my entire district, your entire district, the core center part of Serra Mesa is actually one of the few places where you see a lot of homes that are not within a zone because there isn't that bus line that goes across. There is one that comes over here. And you said, what is the last part of yours? What's my ideal?
Well, yeah, your ideal of what San Diego, what we should do as a city, as a county.
I think that, sure, I think well, you brought up water, and the city of San Diego is spending billions of dollars on the pure water process so that we can have 50% of our own water recycled here so that we're not going to be so reliant on the rest of the state, Colorado River. You see what's happening at Lake Mead right now. So for me, the infrastructure that allows for smart growth is actually the key. Making sure that the bridges are right, that the pipes work. This summer already in District 7, we've had 2 boil water notices because pipes broke that led to pressure dropping, which meant people had to boil their water. And that's not how I like to live. I don't want any of my neighbors to have to do that. So I'm emphasizing the infrastructure build. That includes transportation infrastructure. I want to see the Purple Line built, and I want to see, bless you, I want to see the trolley running faster than every 15 minutes. I want it to be safe and clean when you get on it. All those sorts of things, because that's actually how you create a better economic, what's the right word? An economic atmosphere for everybody so that they have the wages they need to pay for their rent. What I also want to see is young people choosing to remain in San Diego because it's affordable to live here. I will always remember going to UC San Diego into a political science class with about 45 students in it, and I asked them, how many of you want to remain in San Diego? And basically 5 people raised their hand, and everyone else said, I don't want to be here. And there's many reasons why that could be, because maybe their job, political science, maybe they wanted to go to DC and serve there or other things, but fundamentally, it's because it's so expensive to live here. So I want it to be affordable to live in San Diego, and we have a lot of plans on a lot of different affordable aspects. Housing is the most difficult because we have scarce land, and it's prices of material and labor and permitting just are causing everything to go up so fast. But thanks for your question. We got into the philosophy of building there. We have purple, and then I'm going to go to you in the back. We're going to go with these 2 for this moment, and then we'll reassess based on the amount of time. Go ahead. Very good. No, I appreciate your personal experience on that, and I appreciate that your window faces exactly in the direction where this is going to happen and potentially have a negative impact on your life and your family's life. What I will tell you is we're going to get the materials that you've asked for. We're going to send it to your HOA tomorrow. They will send it out. I don't know what their schedule is on when they can send it out so that you can have access to that. And we will get you also, I don't know if the plans themselves are accessible on the city website or if there's simply things that staff has, you know, as working drafts on their computer, whatever that is. But whatever is accessible online for you to go look and you to distribute to whomever you want to and to analyze in your own way, we will get you those URLs, those website URLs as well. I think you were next. Oh, wait. I was going back there, and I'm going to come to you next. Thank you. I'm pointing behind you. Yes? Could I ask you to stand as you say it, because I couldn't hear. The question is, are they going to install the infrastructure that will allow them to have the internet connectivity for themselves, or are they going to essentially draw that networking and service out of yours? Did I get that question correct? I do not know the answer to that question. That is fundamentally something that the developer will, I actually don't know how they go about doing that, but I have to imagine that whether it's Verizon, AT&T, they're going to want their customers to be as connected and as fast as possible. I don't know that specific infrastructure question, but that's a really good question. That's something that I don't have experience in knowing how they go about doing that. But I'm thinking of other development they have in District 7 along Friars Road. They're going to put a lot of units across from Fashion Valley, across from the Nordstrom and the Firestone Tire area, and I see that they've pushed the wall back, or the mountain back. They've put the retaining wall in there, and the only thing I can see besides rebar sitting out of the ground is a cell phone tower right next to it. Like, they've installed that part, so I have to believe that they don't want people over there to have bad internet and you to have slow internet as well. So, sorry, I don't know the specifics of that, but that's the only data point in my mind that I can draw from. But good question. You have a follow-up, sorry. Absolutely, that's something that we can address. We have Spectrum and AT&T, Verizon, their advocates and their staff come talk to us about permitting and all sorts of things all the time. So that's definitely something we can make a phone call on and ask them, when this development is being put in, what are your plans to address their connectivity issues? We had right here.
When we received the email or letter saying that this development is going to come about, it actually mentioned that all the houses were going to be low-income housing. Now,
All of them?
trust me, that's what it said.
Really?
All of our hair went straight up. So you define to us low-income housing, but before you do that, tell me who owns the land right now? Is the city own the land? Are they planning to do rentals, low housing rental? Are they, what are they planning?
First question is, let's go second and then first. Who owns the land? It's my understanding the city doesn't own that land. Am I right about that? It's privately owned. I don't know if it's Fry's or Pay West. Bay West is the owner of the land. So how they're going to go about installing, or I'm sorry, the way they're going to go about choosing their rental system, I don't know. But I'm surprised to hear that it was going to be 100% affordable housing. That was not made clear to me. There's actually legal definitions for affordable housing, rent-restricted affordable housing, and it's all based off of that metric I said earlier, area median income. And they have very low, well, there's extremely low, which is 30% of area median income, all the way down to 0. There's very low, which is my understanding goes to 60%. Between 60 and 80 is the low income, and then you get up to like 80 to 120 is the next sort of zone. City policies tend to either mandate or encourage to get it to 60% or lower. For example, the sports arena development is going to have a significant portion of very low, and then a significant portion of low, and then there's going to be middle income, and then there's going to be market rate, right? So those are the legal definitions of low income affordable housing, and it's got several strata in that way.
But Raul, you're talking about rent. Let's talk about sales.
Mhm.
What low-income housing you're purchasing?
Well, we talk about it in the context of rental so often that I've actually never seen it put to me in terms of affordability of purchase. That the income, the way they compute it is by saying 25% of your income is what ought to be paid on rent. I assume that it would be the same for purchase on mortgage. And so whatever your monthly mortgage would be amortized over 30 years, and that would be the cost of that. I don't know that number at this moment for purchase, but I assume it would be a similar formula. Good question. Did I pick the next person yet? Okay, we're going up here, and then we're going to go to this gentleman on the left, and then we're going to go back to the right over there. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, whenever you're ready. Yeah, you'll be 4? Okay. Oh, do you have people sending in questions? Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Hi. My question has to do with infrastructure as well. I assume that our local police and fire departments are staffed at a level to support the existing number of residents that we've got now. So if we're adding 2,400 more people, what's going to happen to the public safety components? And then also having to do with infrastructure, it's a challenge getting into Walmart and Vons and stuff already with the people that we've got here now. We're taking away part of the parking lot for fast food restaurants and adding 2,400 people. What services are going to be added to support these people?
So the first question, let's go with the public safety aspect. You said you assume that our fire and police departments are staffed to the level to equip them to deal with public safety issues. I'm sorry to say that assumption is wrong, and it's because we have very low staffing in our police department right now. That doesn't, essentially what's happened is that non-life-threatening calls right now are very delayed, and the response times are not good at all. And everyone in city government will tell you that right now. What I can tell you is that we've given the police department 10% raise over the next 2 cycles to try to encourage that. We got a lot of benefit package increase. We're doing our best to try to get people to return to the San Diego Police Department, including recruitment and all those sorts of things. So, and that's something that I've personally suggested in my budget priority memo, including recruiting 600 more police officers in the next 4 years. We need roughly that to be at fully staffed for our projections. Fire is understaffed, but not as severely as police at this moment. So let's get to the second component there is, you said that by bringing in 2,400 people, what are the resources to ultimately serve people there, because they're going to be using the Walmart and the Vons and the fast food restaurants and everything. That is a question that is unanswerable of what the complete and total impact would be on those businesses, and in terms of, you know, whether you're waiting in line for stuff. Ultimately, more people does create more time of waiting. There's no doubt about that, and that is a negative impact. What I do wonder is, and I don't think this is necessarily an answerable question, is are there already people who live somewhere else and drive to use those resources, or is that the group of people? Is a lot of those people who are actually going to move to be closer? So it's safe to assume that the full extent of the negative impact will not be realized, because similar to what you're pointing out, the slowed down time that it takes for you to go to the McDonald's, to go to the Vons, to go to the Walmart, that will be seen by the broader community over into Terrasana and down the freeway and up the freeway, and they'll choose to go to businesses closer to their home rather than coming to yours. So what I would posit, and this is all part of how they do traffic studies, how they do these sort of impact studies, is they say, are you bringing 2,400 people who don't ever use this stuff to your neighborhood? Or are they giving a place to live for 2,400 people who might be using your resources already? So, like I said, that's not necessarily an answerable question, but I think it's something that they actually analyze when they do it.
Where has that study been done? That's why we're all here. Because I do this for a living. I've had to do those studies for developers. Do you represent us, or do you represent the developers? All you've done is defend the development tonight. Has that study been done on the impact to this community? Yes or no?
Sir.
Because it was passed over in the DST department.
Well, sir, here's my answer to you, and I appreciate your answer and your experience in bringing this to this. Before today, this was brought to my attention. I had my staff check in with DSD to get as many details possible to bring this to you. It's my understanding that many of these analyses have been done. What I'm hearing from you is that, well, I don't know that. I've checked with my staff to see that these things have been done. And I would actually say to you, sir, that I'm not defending developers. What I'm doing is giving you an honest update of the state of the law, where these things are in the process, and coming to you with what you want to see. For example, this gentleman with the bicycle helmet is saying he wants to see a new safe path to go to SDSU West. I'm hearing, I want to see more police and fire response because I'm worried that people's lives are going to be at stake. These are the suggestions that are helpful and useful and things I can go advocate for in the budget. And what I can't do is stand here and point you to the literal report, other than to say, give us a chance to find it, give us a chance to communicate it out. If it hasn't been done, absolutely it needs to be done. So that's all I'm saying, sir. Absolutely. Sorry. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. You had a follow-up to what you were saying.
When it comes time for, I know that there was no community briefing or hearing as far as the project went through. Will there be community hearings on what happens to these streets and how they're dealing with the traffic and ingress, egress?
The question is, will there be community input and communication and transparency is really what you're asking for on the way they design the egress, ingress to make sure that this is safe. I will absolutely demand it of city staff that they go to the Kearney Mesa Planning Group and make sure that your local representatives who sit there are part of that. You have my promise that we're going to make a detailed summary of what that is and get it to your HOA so that you can see that, and we can have as many meetings as we need to make sure that your input on that is actually first heard, second of all, analyzed, and third, where it is the practicable resolution to the problem, that it's actually implemented.
I appreciate that, and safety is obviously at the top of the list, but we also have to look at practicality. We have traffic issues here already, and if it's gonna take me 15 minutes longer to get onto the 15, that's a problem.
You're absolutely right that.
And exactly, how are the first responders gonna get through the neighborhood at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
Those are concerns that I think about with every single neighborhood, and believe me when I tell you that the core of my budget priorities in a long memo that we write to the Department of Finance every year is the public safety staffing to make and the resources so they can get places faster. So I'm hearing you loud and clear. What I'm telling you is we can create that avenue for dialogue so that you can feel safe in your community, so that you don't feel overlooked or disrespected in your own community, because that's definitely a feeling that I'm feeling that come from the crowd tonight, that there's a level of disrespect by not coming to the community earlier and explaining what this is going on. And you're not the only community that I've had to look at and say, they don't call their council office with complete communities and tell them, hey, guess what, we're looking into this and we want to communicate with you. A lot of times they say, hey, all we have to do is talk to city staff and we're just going to do the application process and let people be ignored until someone goes on the website, digs deep and figures it out. In fact, literally last week, one of the discussions I had with my staff is we need to make a map for our district where all the potential developments are, because what we're starting to see since Complete Communities was implemented in 2020 is that developers are ignoring their elected officials, or ignoring or bypassing or just completely keeping us in the dark. And so we're going to be proactive about figuring out all those locations, because I don't like being disrespected. I know you don't like being disrespected in that way. I know I called on someone after you. Well, I feel like it was this gentleman back here. So let's go to you next. Vic, do we have a sense of when the developer anticipates completion and move-in?
No idea yet. Still, everything's in pre-review right now.
Sorry, say that again?
Everything's in pre-review right now.
Everything is still in that early reviews phase at this point. When does it start was the other question I have. I think that's also up in the air based on the pre-review phase.
What's the name? Yeah, do you have a sense? Is it a year, 2 years, 5 years?
With that many units, I believe it's going to be in multiple, just based on the sheer size of it, I think it's going to be in multiple phases. I can think of a similarly sized development on Mission Gorge Road that has about 900 to 1,000 units on it, and that is literally over the course of like 8 years, because they build 1 or 2 residential towers and then they move to the next one because of the nature of the driving in the resources, construction, all those sorts of things. So
There's 3 permits already submitted, one to demo it, one for grading, and one for a parking garage. Sorry, a 4th one is for phase 1, which is 200 units.
so
Clearly notice. It's on the website.
well, sir, I did read out all the different 6 permits earlier in the introduction to my talking points, but what I'm trying to say here is the question is, how long is it going to take? It's not clear to me how long that is. So, but many, many years.
No, I mean, my question was, do you have a sense as to when the project will get started?
That's the other aspect of it. They might get the full authority to tear down that building and grade it and do that in the short term, and then move to the next phase. That I don't know. That's something I haven't spoken to the developer about.
Sir, to that point, can we ask you to invite the developer here to talk to us?
Yeah, absolutely. When's your next HOA meeting? 1 month from today? Or actually, well, we don't need to wait for an HOA meeting. We can set up a public meeting, can't we? You don't have to notify him with the Brown Act. Sir, you had the name as
Bay West.
Bay West.
Bay West Developers.
Out of where?
You can go to their website, baywest.com.
It's out of the West Bay. No, just West Bay, yeah. Okay, so this gentleman had the next question, but then I was going back to her over there, yes. Go ahead, yes, please. You ready for your question? Can you stand so I can hear you a little bit better, please? Yep.
I have 2 little ones. My concern and something I would really like to put pressure on the developers about is designating a tot lot or some sort of open space for the children that they have there. It's really small. We have our park here too. We use it daily. That we pay our HOA fees go towards that. So I'd like for us to not have to share, with 12, 10 residents.
Yes, absolutely. I was definitely, before my wife and I moved into our home, I was part of an HOA, not dissimilar from this one, and the privacy of the space that you actually pay to keep up is something you want to see preserved. That's absolutely a priority. I totally agree with you on that. And as who asked earlier about the amenities, I believe it was you who asked about the amenities. That's definitely something that we can encourage the developer to put in so that they have a child-focused amenity so that people don't choose to go somewhere else. It'd also be in their development so they don't have to walk so far as well. Just as a side note, basically any development that comes to the city council for our vote for approval or disapproval, I promote on-site childcare as a definite policy because I want developers to be able to not just have affordable housing for their folks, but also the nearby and affordable childcare because ultimately we know that that's like a second rent payment. So the welfare of children as part of this is something I bring up every single council meeting, every single committee meeting. So I appreciate that that's your concern, and I'm absolutely going to fight very hard for that. All right, so I see 3 hands. No, when I say there's 3 hands, then there's more hands going up. 1, I saw 2, and then I saw 3 over there. So let's start with that. Yes?
Could you review or tell us where the transportation hotspot was that was actually a half mile from Fry's? Because I don't know of any hotspot other than 928 that parks in front of Walmart and the bench there.
Yes.
Was that the hotspot?
It's any transit.
That allowed this all to happen? Really? Okay. Just one simple little bus stop.
Like as I read at the beginning, just as a refresher, it's essentially a transit priority area is any area within a 1/2 mile of a major transit spot, and a transit spot was where there's 2 bus lanes or 2 bus routes that run every 15 minutes during high traffic time. So that would be that's a lot of spaces throughout the city of San Diego. Which goes back to the original question that was asked up here, which is it just us or is it everywhere? And if you go look at the transit priority area map for the entire city, you will see a lot of yellow space. That's the color that it is on the map. I looked at it today, and there's a lot of space.
Also the multiple stops along Arrow.
There's multiple spots along Arrow Drive as well that create that. And so I'm trying to think that I don't know if it's any other bus lanes that come around, but it's essentially, if you have 2 bus routes that come together that go to either the El Cajon Trolley Transit Center or to the Grantville Transit Center, I'm trying to think if there's another one has the same proximity here. I know that that's probably closer down towards the 8, but
Stonecrest and Arrow Drive.
yes, that would be that one. So if you think of a bus route that goes to a major transit center, it's not just like a loop. It's not like, oh, there's 2 buses that go off on a loop in a random center and all of a sudden you can develop there. It has to be connected to one of the major hubs. At least that's my analysis of many of the bus stops in our district. Who was our second person? It was you before you. Then go ahead, please. So the question was, if it was zoned commercial, what essentially changed to allow there to be residential housing? That was the Complete Communities Initiative from 2020 that essentially translated into San Diego's municipal code, a statewide policy to promote housing development close to transit stops. So that allows a lot of spaces that you've seen as either strip malls, as commercial, things like that, to be transformed into housing without it becoming a city council decision where we can actually vote it up or down. Just as a reminder, that's called the discretionary process versus a ministerial process.
Here's what I found.
Sorry to get in your space.
It's horrible. It is horrible.
The question is, what is the developer's plan to mitigate the traffic impacts? That is, say that again? And the noise, yes. That is all part of an analysis done by city staff to make sure that the impacts are not exorbitant, not extravagant. I don't know the exact rerouting of the cars. I don't know the exact mechanisms for that. Fundamentally, the city streets that exist is where you can have the most impact to explain how you want to see that go. But to answer your question very specifically, I do not know what the developers' designs are to deal with those issues, but it is a part of what the city studies to make sure it is as low as possible. What I'm telling you is that, well, let me ask you if your question is this. How is it approvable if they don't have that plan? I'm not saying that they don't have a plan. I'm saying I don't know what that plan exactly is, and that's part of what city staff does in looking at their proposals. For example, oftentimes there's a minimum required setback from the street for a building so that you can have parking, so you can have hedges, so that you can have sidewalk, things like that. City staff can ask for additional setbacks to create more space for safety, things like that. Those are the typical questions that city staff in the planning department, in the development services department, in the transportation department, and there's multiple departments that look at all this in tandem. They are the ones who analyze all those components and either make recommendations or actually put mandates on the developer to do. So that is a very granular and specific question that I don't know the answer to, and that is part of what city staff is doing as they analyze these sorts of things. What I want you to understand is that this isn't being done willy-nilly. What's being done is anticipating what the impact will be and how to drive down the negative impacts and maximize the positive impacts. I'm sorry I don't have the answer to your question. It's an important question. It's one that we want to get the answer to as quickly as possible, which is why I think we want to invite the developer to come see you all. And I'll be here too. So, but thank you for being here and thank you for that very good question. Let's go with you first.
So, you are planning perhaps to talk to the developer at some point?
Yes.
Okay. I know this happened in Escondido at some point and a couple other places. That percentage of a developer can either pay a percentage to have the low income housing built somewhere else, and so then sometimes it can all come together for one big development. I just want to know, is that what that's going to be? Because it seems like there's not a clear exactly, is it all low income, is it a percentage? And just being in real estate, I mean, that happens a lot where finally they come together with all the developers' money and make one big low income place to satisfy that agreement. I just want to know if that's what that is.
Sure.
You can ask the developer.
That's a question we can ask the developer. What I heard earlier was that a notice that went out from some sort, I don't know, can someone tell me what source that earlier letter was that said it was going to be 100% affordable?
We were told there would be low income housing with no environmental analysis or traffic studies required.
Okay. So
Imagine as a homeowner, you get that.
I understand. What I'm speaking from a very theoretical level, I would find it very surprising that that would be 100% affordable. I don't know anywhere else in San Diego that has 1,000 to 1,200 units that's 100% affordable. Typically, if it's 100% affordable, it's 130 to 150, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Usually less. Usually it's like 60 or 70. But that's what typically is. With that space over there, privately owned, I do not anticipate they would qualify for all the different tax credits, all the different subsidies from state, federal government, and the local agencies to actually have 100% affordable. I have to believe that a significant portion is going to be market rate. Okay. Thanks for bringing your expertise into that question. Let's go over here to the hat.
Yeah, so you talk about affordability, making San Diego a sustainable place for our kids to stay, other people, in the tech industry and good-paying jobs, allowing companies to grow. All I see right now are apartment after apartment up in Mira Mesa. There's got to be 2,000 units. The city is letting corporations come in here, a lot of them foreign-owned, buying up land, building apartments. Those are going to keep people really poor, right? You're just
going to pay their salaries to wealthy corporations. Why isn't the city mandating that 80% of anything built from here on out are condominiums to give people a chance to buy something that they own and also to help keep property prices down? You want to keep property prices in situ or even lower, then build more housing that people can buy rather than building apartment complexes and keeping people poor.
It's a great point. I think the fundamental market factors that go towards why are developers not building more condominiums and are building apartments more and more that's the more, that you're absolutely right, that's the more profitable investment for them, correct?
That's why we have you here to represent us, create laws, and make that happen. That's not happening here.
Well,
It's keeping our families from building both. Right.
I understand the point that you're making. What I'm gathering is you would like to see a regulation that would prohibit or at least mandate a certain level of for sale units of any development that goes up. That's the policy solution that you're suggesting.
That's exactly it, yes. And I can't believe it hasn't been done. I mean, this isn't rocket science.
Well, the instinct I'm having as I'm thinking through that policy is that there's some I haven't heard of any city implementing that policy, which makes me think that the reason behind that is that there's some legal, either a legal restriction, constitutional restriction maybe, as to what municipalities are allowed to do to create that opportunity. It is a good idea. I'm just wondering why no other municipality, facing a housing crisis that we've seen for about 10 years, hasn't actually implemented something like that.
Money, money, money. The almighty dollar.
We can all change laws.
Yes, we can.
Almighty dollar.
Yeah, you have my commitment that I will ask our city attorney if that is a policy that is allowable under our city charter and under our state constitution. Yes.
About the traffic, you have to know that it's, at certain times, we're stuck there half an hour and we have to find another route to get out. I mean, just the other day, it's that stadium, the Snap Stadium, and they have all these, so, I mean, it's certain times of the day, but it is terrible. Already. So I can't imagine having more people here. It's not a good idea.
Understood.
For our community.
You just pointed out something about that stadium usage on Saturday was creating a significant backlog.
Yes, I don't know when all those events happen, but every time there's an event, you're stuck. You're stuck. You can't. It's gridlock. You cannot move.
Understood. Well, that's not just a problem for the fact that you shouldn't have to wait that long. That's also a problem with the fact that, you know, if an ambulance needs to get in, if there's, you know, God forbid, a fire or something in a canyon, that creates a big problem. I appreciate you bringing that up, and thanks for pointing out the specific examples as well.
I think that's our point, is that we can't add 2,400 more cars to this issue. We've only got two ways to get to 15 right now, to get out of here.
The developer might have roads going out and development right onto that road. We don't know. That's the thing. We need to find out what the developer's plan is. They might have in and out points throughout that development.
This is why, as I said earlier, that the complete communities initiative is having some negative externalities that are unintended consequences, I think. And so what you're pointing out is that the number of people who live in this community, if I can ask you real quick, how many people live in this community?
I've counted them. We have about, let's see, 579 units.
Mm-hmm.
And then 250 is the apartments
Mm-hmm.
that we have here already. Total of 839 units.
839
Yeah,
units.
so if we add
Or-
1,200, it'll be 2,039 some units in the whole area here, including.
It's just under 12.
Just under 1,200
If you
in
count
totality.
The apartments on Cambridge and Arcadia and then all the residents together, it's almost 1,200. And so that's 1,200 and double.
Understood. I appreciate understanding that number as a mirror to what is about to happen there for the overall impact. I think the
How many stories are the apartments? No, that's a parking.
it's unclear to me what the from the details from the plan what the anticipated size would be. High rise is a particular definition. I don't know if it's going to be, most things are going up at roughly between 4 and 6, sometimes 7. There's different types of construction.
Is there a blueprint that we can look at and see what your
Vic, do we have a blueprint on this? We'd have to figure out if DSD has that at this point. But that's a very good question. And overall, getting to the details of what the developer's ultimate plan is a key aspect here. Okay, thank you. We'll go right here. We'll go one more in person, and then we'll finish up here. Thank you.
So I know that something was thrown around at an HOA meeting about putting a roundabout here,
Mhm.
and to disincentivize people from cutting into the community. What would it take to get something like that installed?
In short, the question was, how can we block them from driving over here? I hear you loud and clear. I think fundamentally it's going to have to be a new road that drives people in a different direction than away from here. I'm thinking of the major developments that happen in District 7, for example, San Diego State, Mission Valley's campus, one of the promised infrastructure pieces that they are going to build on their dime is the bridge. If you all know where the IKEA is, there's been planned for 30 years, a bridge that crosses over the river to go to the other side so that traffic can exit out that way instead of taking Friars over here. It sounds to me like, given the size of this relative to the size of that and the current traffic situation already on these two roads, there needs to be a new egress out of here to allow for first people to choose to go that other way, and also, I mean, from their point of view, whenever that is done, they're not going to want to take a place that has terrible traffic to get out to. So it's actually incumbent on it's for the quality of everybody's living situation that an extra road be part of the plan over there is what it sounds like. We have a roundabout. I'll say a roundabout is always an option. The biggest thing holding back roundabouts in more parts of the city is that it's like $600,000 or something to build a roundabout. It's like, or more, depending on the land issues. I know it's been more up in District 1 in La Jolla. I've heard from my staff, but it's fundamentally a cost thing. But it's definitely something that we should look into because it might be a very, very wise investment of several $100,000 so that your traffic time is not doubled, is not increased by 50%, it's not increased by 25%. We have a question up here to end the night.
Yes, you answered most everything, but one of the questions was about the street lights, and you're invited when you leave, now that it's dark, to see that all of them are around us, all up and down Daly Center and this intersection right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fits into the whole safety thing. And the next one was...
I'll address the street lights when you're done, yeah.
Okay, and there's only one other. Behind Walmart, there's a bluff, and there's a homeless encampment there. And so there's questions about movement towards the homeless encampments that are hiding in our neighborhood.
Understood. Let's start with the street lights. So right now, the city of San Diego, as of about 4 or 5 months ago, our data and analytics team told us that we are about 6,500 streetlights are out throughout the city. And the fundamental reason for that is that we only have about 8 electricians that work for the city. The reason we only have 8 electricians that work for the city is because if you look at the salary schedule, and I have, a 5th-year electrician makes the same as a 1st-year electrician in the private sector, unionized electrician. And so ultimately, a lot of the skilled electricians that we could have come to the city don't because they get paid elsewhere. What I can tell you is that we last year gave our blue-collar workers the biggest raise in probably 15 years because we've seen this coming for a while. Again, coming back to staffing, whether it's police or fire or electricians, we are emphasizing it highly. Second thing is that I know that the mayor's staff has been in negotiations with our local, the union that represents our electricians on staff, to try to be able to bring in outside electricians to at least close the gap, right? So I know that those conversations, my understanding is that they were concluded, but they might still be ongoing with last-minute contractual issues. But we are trying to bring on more electricians so that we can close the gap, get it back to a manageable level while we hire on more electricians to the city of San Diego. So that I think Vic would tell you that one of the #1 complaints we get from folks is our street lights out, and it's been out. And that is one of 6,500 that we are trying to address in a systematic way instead of a scattershot way. So I'm sorry that your street lights are not operating. We're trying to get to the very bottom of actually making it so everyone's streetlights operate.
Why not just use a contractor?
That's the point. We cannot necessarily just put out a bid for a contractor, given our recognized employee organization rules. But that is what the discussion has been, so they can bring in those contractors. The next aspect of it is homeless encampment over here beyond the bluff, next to the Walmart, right? Can you tell me roughly, is anybody familiar with the size? How many folks might be living right there right now? Is there anybody who walks past it or?
We had a lot of them at one time. They get less, but they go into the bush and they live there for quite some time.
Sure.
Few of them right now.
Sure. I think what I can tell you is that this city council, this mayor, we've invested more in homelessness funding, community outreach to get to homeless individuals so we can encourage them to go, and then into services, into shelters. We've expanded shelter access well beyond what it was in 2019 before the pandemic hit. And so we are at a point, on top of that, we are working with the county to get the mental health workers who can actually do a lot of that outreach to help people who need that type of help. The third thing we are doing that the mayor's office has instituted is a lot more community cleanup, where it is getting to the point of a public health issue, where the trash and where, unfortunately, due to a lack of public restrooms, people will go to the restroom outside. We focus on those things from the sustainability department and the police department to go out and do that. Yeah, the sustainability department is the city's health department. So yes, City of San Diego doesn't have health and human services per se services, as opposed to the county, which by state law manages health issues. So that's why we don't have a health department in that manner. But I'm absolutely going to contact our sustainability department and let them know they're basically housed at the Miramar landfill, and that's where they have all their trucks and all their stuff like that to help with that, and let them know that we need to have a city staff come down in this area, make sure that it's clean, and ultimately we can also call our partners at the organization PATH. It's People Assisting the Homeless. They work with the San Diego River Park Foundation and have data on most of the people, if not all the people who live in the San Diego River Basin who are homeless, and ask them to come up this way because it's still technically part of the river basin, I think, and ask them to do that outreach here. I just want to say in conclusion that I really appreciate you staying out here this long to bring to me your ideas, to bring to me your frustrations, so we can communicate those. The bottom line is we have a lot of homework. We've been given homework assignments, and we take that very seriously. We're going to work closely with your HOA to get that out and get it to you. The second thing I will say is that we will be incredibly adamant with the developer about having them come up here, and not just a PR person, but a construction manager, the development person, a design person, people who are supposed to be in charge of the project, come here and have answers for you. And we have a lot of the questions that you asked me. I've had that conversation with a different developer in a different part of town, and the person had all the answers for me when I asked him very straightforward what they were. So we can have that conversation directly and then get them out here so they can answer your questions directly. And I hope you'll be as forceful. I hope you'll be as straightforward and demand as much as you can, so that I can be sitting here saying, this is what we need in this area for everyone's safety, for everyone's, I don't think she's here anymore, for everyone's quality of life, for everyone's peace of mind with the traffic, and of course, so that you can continue to live a comfortable life in the home that you've chosen. And so thank you very much for being here. Have a great night.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.